Hello and welcome. We're sorry we can't be with you today. Unfortunately, due to the current fuel crisis, we just can't get over to Snibston. But we are very happy to be talking to you and explaining some of the processes about how to apply to the National Lottery Heritage Fund. My name is Debbie Cooper. I'm an engagement manager for the Midlands and East. And with me is my colleague.
Hi everyone, my name is Chloe Robeson-Smith. I'm also Engagement Manager for Midlands and East.
So let's go on to our next slide.
Cool, just wait for it to load.
Apologies, we're having some delays. Just like everything else happening in the country at the moment, we're also having some technical delays.
No.
Here we are, Heritage Focus. So we wanted to start by talking to you about the focus of the heritage in projects. We've got quite a range of heritage that you could focus on. And heritage is quite hard to define sometimes. It can mean very different things to different people. It can include nature and designed landscapes, memories and stories, cultural traditions, buildings, monuments, places, objects and archaeology. We wanted to remind you that although we're very passionate about nature and landscapes, to make sure that any project that you put forward to us is really strong on what the heritage is that's in part of your project. If we move on to the priorities, we've recently updated our priorities within our strategic framework for 2019 to 2024. We wanted to start by talking about inclusion. Obviously, we want to include people from all demographics. By no means are we limiting our inclusion focus. But according to national research, in particular the Audience Agency, the majority of cultural public engagement in the UK is still based on audiences of older, white, middle-class people. And while we really want to welcome those people and everyone to the arts and culture and heritage, we really want to focus on the people that are missing. So within heritage, we're focusing on Black, Asian, minority and ethnic communities, children and young people, people with disabilities and LGBTQ heritage and communities. Again, that doesn't mean to exclude anyone that's not in those groups, but think about if your project can reach out to groups that are not currently engaging with heritage.
Yeah, as Debbie's saying, we're really keen to support these groups, and we will be talking more about how we can reach these groups as well in future slides.
So when it comes to our themes, again, landscape and nature is incredibly important to us. Community heritage, we've got 13 areas of geographical focus, 2 of which fall into the Midlands, which are Walsall and Corby, and heritage at risk.
So we are really keen to support public parks and urban green spaces. So we have invested more than £950 million in public parks and cemeteries over the last 26 years. And this has helped to transform over 900 parks across the UK, improving the experience for the 37 million people that use public parks every year. And on the next couple of slides, we've got some examples as well of some previously awarded projects that we've supported.
This is a great project on Bultham Park when they had funding to have a restoration project. Obviously, restoration projects can be quite expensive and a lot of work goes into it, working with lots of technical details. But what we want to think about is if you're doing projects that are focused on restoration or nature, how can you involve your public in that? How can you involve heritage in that? What elements all pull this project together? We're also very interested in partnership working, and this project worked in partnership with the local wildlife trust and focus on restoration but public engagement throughout that.
And our next example is from Sawston Park, which is up near Edinburgh, and their project was focusing on restoration and well-being. So it was restoration work of the walled garden and bandstand in the park. However, the well-being focus, they really wanted to engage the local community on the benefits that the park can bring for your mental well-being and also your physical well-being. So they held some horticultural therapy classes and also cycling classes for people with disabilities, which they made use of some modified bikes and redesigned park paths as well. And they also organised some events with local Syrian community groups to make refugees feel welcome in the park as well.
If you're thinking of applying to us, we'd really like you to take a bit of time first to really focus on what the heritage need and opportunity is. We get some great projects coming in about public engagement and working with communities, but sometimes the heritage isn't as strong as need be for the application. So take a bit of time to think about how you can bring the heritage that's important to your locality or to your park or green space or landscape really strongly into that project. One of the great ways of doing that is to work with local people, to collaborate with them, to research what's important to people locally. What do they care about? What histories might be happening that maybe need uncovering? You might have some great local heritage or some traditions that might be able to be incorporated as part of your project. Think about heritage that might be inaccessible or maybe is under-recorded and under-documented. Or you might have a significant date coming, maybe a centenary. As much as you can collaborate with your local people really improves the quality of the application and strengthens how important that heritage and the space is to people. So when you're looking at your project idea, we'd really like you to focus very strongly on the crossover, the bits where your project crosses into our priorities and outcomes. So if you take the time to really read through the priorities and outcomes, we're going to be going through some of them today, but there's lots more information on our website. And rather than trying to get funding for the entire project, focus on those areas where there's a real crossover, there's strength in what you're trying to deliver and what we're interested in, and together we can help shape a great project that hopefully can get funded.
So now we're going to talk to you about our funding programmes. So we have three, so it's small, medium and large. So our small funding programme is from £3,000 to £10,000. There's no deadlines for this programme, so it's nice and convenient. You can apply whenever you're ready.
This is also, sorry to jump in, Chloe. This is also a great way to test an idea. We do recommend to some groups, maybe you've got a huge idea, but it might need lots of work to do public engagement or test if there's interested in this heritage or the locality. So you can put in a small application, try out some ideas and help shape a bigger project from that.
Definitely, yeah, it's a really good opportunity for first-time applicants as well to come here and just to pilot those ideas and activities. And for the small programme, generally projects last up to a year for this as well. For the medium programme of £10,000 to £250,000, again, there's no deadlines, nice and convenient. It's also an 8-week turnaround, which is quite quick. And projects generally last up to 5 years as well. And for the medium programme, it's from £10,000 up to £100,000. There's no match funding requirements. However, this does change from £100,000 up to £250,000, where we expect a 5% minimum partnership funding. Now, this can be cash, non-cash, volunteer time, or a contribution of all of those as well.
It also really strengthens your application if you can do partnership working. It shows that you've got a real commitment to your locality or to other people buying into your project and it being as important to them as it is to you. So it's not just about adding to that matched funding requirement, but it also shows to us that you've got some real longevity in your project and some real buy-in. I'd also like to add the point that any projects over £100,000 the cash is paid in arrears. So you would do a bit of the work and then invoice, submit your invoices, and we'd pay the next bit. So if cash flow is a problem, it might be better to stick to a project under 100,000.
And with this grant scheme as well, we do have a project inquiry service as well. So this isn't mandatory, but we do really encourage people to submit project inquiry forms, because it's just a really good way of getting some extra feedback and advice on your project idea before you come to submit your full application. It's quite a quick and simple way of getting this advice as well. So all you need to do is set up an account on our website and click the project inquiry form button, and then there's 1 or 2 pages of questions where you can tell us a bit more about your project, so what you want to do, why you want to do it, and the budget. And then we have 10 working days to get back to you with some feedback. And moving on to our final larger grant programme of £250,000 through to £5 million. Slightly a few more hoops to jump through, I guess, for this one, because it's a larger amount. So we have a 2-round application process, which is development and delivery. The decision panel is a regional committee decision as well, so it's not as much of a localised decision because it's a larger amount. There's quarterly deadlines, and these are advertised on our websites. Because it's a larger scale as well, there's slightly longer decision times as well, so it's a 12-week decision turnaround. And it's a maximum 7 years, which is split up to 2 years development and 5 years delivery. There is also a mandatory expression of interest form, which is similar to the project inquiry form, but it is a mandatory, and once you submit it, you will either be invited to go forward and submit a full application, or discouraged, but we can support you as well, even if you are discouraged.
Yeah, we can offer advice and support that maybe we're discouraging it because some of the things don't hit our outcomes, and we can give you advice on how to develop that further. So here are our outcomes. There's quite a few, but we want to go through them, so hopefully don't be overwhelmed. We're not expecting you to do all of these. As you will notice, there's only one mandatory outcome, and that is a wider range of people will be involved in heritage. We spoke a little bit earlier about our priorities with engagement and reaching out to people, but we're not limiting to that. It's just about assessing who you are currently engaging with and understanding how you can be wider about that, who's not included. So how can you expand from your existing audience? And then we go on to our priority outcomes. Now there's 5 of these, and these are not mandatory, and nor do we want you to do all of them. So one of them is people have developed skills. People will have greater well-being. The funded organisations, that's you, will become more resilient. The local economy will be boosted, and the local area will be a better place to live, work or visit. We recommend that you focus on no more than 1 or 2 of these, and it will really strengthen your application and your project if you focus on them clearly and make some really good plans for these, rather than try and do all of them. I'd like to add the caveat that if you choose well-being, which is a fantastic thing to focus on, you do need to include the details as to how you will manage that and how you will assess that. So we do need to know that you're getting a good baseline of what the well-being is at the start of the project and how you are measuring the improvement of that. And then the other outcomes, which are also there, are heritage will be a better condition, heritage will be identified and better explained, and people will have learned about heritage, leading to a change in ideas and actions. Again, please don't focus on all of them, but use these to question and explore how you can bring heritage into your project, and think about these ways of making opportunities for heritage in your area.
Yep, and as Debbie said, you do not need to reach all of those. We only have one mandatory, which is the top one, and it is scalable to the size of grant request as well. So if you're coming for a smaller project, you don't expect you to meet as many as what perhaps a larger project would meet. And there is a lot more information about each outcome on our website as well for you to have a look through.
So a wider range of people will be involved in heritage. What does this mean? So as I mentioned before, think about who already knows or has access to the heritage you're working with now. For example, you might have groups of older people who are really interested in this heritage. How could you reach out to younger people? One of the reasons that we ask for this is because we want the heritage to be secure for the future, and only by widening the range of people who are involved in it mean that this heritage will be cared about and looked after in 30, 40 plus years. So think about, again, who currently has access, who else can you add to that? Get to know your local demographic. We're not expecting you to reach out to groups that don't exist in your area, but if you understand who does engage, who does live locally, who's already engaging, and identify the gaps of who's missing, you might find that most people who visit your park or your project are able-bodied. So maybe you could look into, why is that? What is the barrier to engagement for disabled people? And you can address that as part of the project. Do think about building relationships and partnerships to deliver this. You don't have to do it all yourself. You might find that you've got some fantastic community groups and charities local who you can work with, collaborate with, and really widen out a passion and interest for heritage and landscapes and nature. I went to visit recently a fantastic project at Marty Eaton Park by the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, and they've been working with local Asian communities to bring community groups to the park and go on bumblebee walks so they can understand more about the nature that's local and then take that knowledge back into their own communities. And that has been really engaging. They've also worked with young students who are become their digital volunteers to help them share information online and put together events. Yeah, so think about who else you could reach to. And also I'd like to add, think about the difference between informing and involving. By saying involving people in heritage in your project, it's not the same as informing. So information boards, although they're incredibly useful, are quite passive engagement. Maybe you could work with people to create that rather than just write it yourself and have them be informed of the information.
And also, just to add, it's so important to also monitor this throughout the whole of your project, right from the start through to the end. So with every project, we will expect to see an evaluation report at the end where you will be able to tell us how you've reached this outcome. So it's really important to collect the data as you're living it, as you were from the start through to the end of the project.
That's a really good point. Make sure you make some baselines at the beginning.
Definitely. So I'm afraid it's not business as usual. So since March last year, all of our efforts at the fund have been focused on supporting heritage across the UK to adapt and respond to the immediate impact of the coronavirus. The effects of the pandemic has seen an appreciation for the value of urban green spaces that hasn't existed since the Victorian era. Parks have been extremely important to many people during last year and also this year, not only for the social and physical health benefits, but also for the mental health and well-being support that they've provided. So in response to the COVID pandemic, and also the needs of the heritage sector, we have shifted some of our funding priorities slightly. So what's new? So some of the key changes, we have provided an enhanced focus and information on the 6 priority outcomes that we've mentioned, and also the environmental sustainability requirements. So this requirement is it is a mandatory requirement now, and we will talk a bit more about that in the next few slides. It's also really important to consider risk more carefully with your projects. So risk in terms of financial, but also in terms of the activities as well, and a number of elements as well, which we will be talking about, and some other minor updates for clarification purposes as well.
So we've already seen this slide, haven't we? But we just wanted to show it again to remind you of the outcomes, but also to mention the environmental sustainability requirement. While it's not classed as one of our outcomes, we are assessing all projects that are put forward at application stage about environmental sustainability. So we really want you to think about what environmental impacts your project is creating and how you can manage those. So you might find that your project uses certain materials. Are you making the best choices for the environment on those? Or you might find that lots of people are travelling to your project. Are you encouraging them to use public transport? So think about by your project existing in the world, what is the environmental footprint of that and what can you do to mitigate it? And you might even find that you're not only mitigating it, you're actually benefiting the environment. So we want to see in applications that people have actually thought through that and addressed it. So here is the environmental sustainability requirement. So it's, like I said, it's a requirement for all projects. We expect the highest standards of sustainability to be delivered in everything we fund. That's on all levels, so from small to large. Just think about limiting any potential damage and cost to the environment within your project. And on the other side, see if you can make any positive impact. So it's not just about limiting, but also about improving. We're aware that you can't fix everything in a project. We're not asking you to do more than is possible, but we're asking you to make sure that you've assessed and addressed at each stage.
And of course, this is scalable again to the grant request size. So for smaller projects, we don't expect you to do as much as the larger projects. And again, we do have a lot more information on this on our website too. So in terms of environmental sustainability, again, one thing that you can do is you can include membership fee in your application to join the Fit for Future network. So the Fit for Future network has over 100 organisations from across the not-for-profit, heritage, public and cultural sectors. And it provides advice and resources to help you reduce your environmental impact. So we really encourage you to explore this before you submit your application, just to see if it's something you would like to find out more about and also to join the brilliant network that it is. So here's just some examples of how you could reach this requirement for different grant sizes. So for our small grants of £3,000 to £10,000, you could, for example, encourage visitors, volunteers or staff to use public transport instead of everyone driving individually their vehicles on the roads. You could use compostable or biodegradable plates and cutlery for events catering, or you could use recycled or low carbon environmentally friendly materials, increase recycling, reduce energy use, reduce water use as well. For the larger grants from £10,000 up to £5 million, there's a bit more scope of what you could do. So for example, for built heritage projects that have increased habitats for nature is a good example, or you could use solar panels or generated energy on site via wind as well. Again, reduced energy use through introducing more efficient heating or insulation, LED lighting, better control systems. Again, reducing water use through recycling grey water or low flush toilets. Or even creating a green travel plan as well to encourage visitors to use sustainable transport such as walking, cycling and public services. So there's loads of different opportunities and ideas out there which you could use. So I do encourage you to have a good think about what elements you could bring to your project. And if you have any questions on this as well, we're always more than happy to help.
So we also need you to address risk in any project. You're asking for funding, of course, and we need to ensure that you're a safe place to put the funding. So you need to address what all the risks could be within your project and show that you've, again, assessed and addressed those. So to share the financial risk, it really helps if you can bring in some matched funding. We did mention that projects over 100,000 need to show some matched funding either in kind or in actual cash. But at any stage project, if you can bring in even a small amount of match funding, it really strengthens your application. It shows that you spread the financial risk and you're reporting back to more than one funder. Think about organisational at the moment. There's a lot of changes happening in the sector, and I know things are very difficult with cash flow. So think about, what risks might happen, how you can mitigate for those. Think about if there's key people that are leading on the entire project. We've seen projects where they're fantastically written and very ambitious, but actually if one person was to change roles or not be part of it anymore, the whole project could collapse. So think about how you spread that risk across your whole organisation to make sure that it can keep being delivered. We've also got lots of risks happening at the moment with COVID and obviously with fuel and things. I know you can't imagine everything that might happen as a risk, but really assess what's been happening in society in the last few years and think about how your organisation is developing and managing, and look at the different risks that might happen. Obviously, if you're going to have lots of restoration or any building work in your project, there can be some serious risks to costs, materials, suppliers. And the more that you can prove that you've understood the risks, obviously there's going to be some risks in a project to make it happen. But if you can evidence that you've understood it, that you've addressed it, and that you've made some contingency plans for if any of these risks happen, it really adds a lot of strength to your application.
One thing as well, which will help you to adapt to the risks, is if you include a good amount of budget for contingency as well. And again, in terms of social and engagement activities, which you will need to do to reach a mandatory outcome, it would be great if you can consider how the activities can be adapted. For example, if social distancing measures is reintroduced, fingers crossed it's not going to, but again, obviously no one really knows what's going to happen, so it's great if you can just consider those and include budgets for any of those risks as well, just to reduce that.
And I would also like to encourage you again to look at the website. There is a lot of detailed guidance in there, and some people tell us it's too much information, but that's because we fund such a wide range of projects. We can't give you all the information for all the different project ideas and scopes today. So there are multiple different guides on our website. Take a bit of time to look through them. Make sure that you understand the latest information about environment, maybe digital use, accessibility, and address these in your project. The bigger your project is, the more you need to ensure that you've really got down to details on this. We really need to know that you're making a good audience development plan, for example, or like I said, digital guides. So yeah, there's information on the website. Please read through it, have a look at our outcomes in more detail and see what addresses to your project. And just to recap, we want you to address and assess any potential risks for the impacts of COVID will have on your project delivery. Have a clear plan of how you're going to engage a wider range of people. It's great to have that as an ambition, but how will you actually ensure that happens? And again, assess and address the environmental impact of your project.
And in terms of the next steps, we'd really encourage you just to head to the website, have a look at the different grant programs we have, the different outcomes as well, and the environmental sustainability requirements. Have a good read through, see which is relevant to you, and please do get in touch as well if you have any questions at all. We're more than happy to help out. And so just want to say thank you very much for your time today and for inviting us along. We hope you found it useful, and we hope you have a great rest of the day as well. Thank you.
Thank you.